Alright, today what we're going to be doing is starting chapter 6. This is the applications of percents chapter. This is also the chapter where we're going to be working with some real world ideas with budget and all of that good stuff. Alright, so what we're going to talk about specifically today first is fractions, percents, and decimals. This is something that should be a review for you, but just so you remember how to go between all three of them, it's a really good skill to have. All right, so first, what is a percent? A percent means out of 100. All right, all percents are out of 100 no matter what. We can use that percent symbol as a handy way to write the fraction with a common denominator of 100. So for example, if we say 8 out of every 100 professional basketball players are female, we can say 8% of the professional basketball players are female. It makes things a little bit easier to use. All right, so how do we go from fractions to percents? There's actually two different ways we can use it. The one we're going to be concentrating on first is to write a fraction as a percent, write a proportion, and solve. Okay, so you can set up a proportion. We've been working with proportions all last chapter, so this should be very familiar to you. So we want one ratio is the fraction. Okay, so for instance, in this one we have 9 over 20 equals whatever unknown over 100. All right, now there's two different things we can do at this point. We can cross multiply, okay, or we can figure out the relationship between 20 and 100. All right, the reason I say that there are two different ways to do it is oftentimes 20, the number doesn't nicely multiply by something to equal 100. For example, if that were to be, 19. All right, it would be easier to cross multiply in that case because 19 times nothing equals exactly 100. All right, so in this case, we can figure out that times 5, we can do multiply 20 times 5 to equal 100. So 9 times 5 is 45, and so therefore our percent is 45%. All right, so let's do a couple real quick ones. So we have 5 out of 10. Well, that would be 50%. All right. Now, what about 9 out of 12? If we have 9 out of 12, 12 does not multiply nicely to equal 100. We don't have anything. 12 times nothing equals exactly 100. So I'm going to set up my proportion here. My denominator of 100 and solve for my x. Cross multiply, so then I have 12x equals 9 times 100, which is 900. And then if we just divide both sides by 12 to solve for x, we want to get x by itself. Then we're going to get x equals 900 divided by 12 is 75. All right? All right. Next up, we have renaming decimals as percents. This is a very, very simple process. If I were to take this example here, I have 0.38, and I want to write that as a percent. So I can actually write the 38 hundredths as a fraction. So I can say 38 out of 100. That could be my first step. And then that percent, 38 out of 100, equals 38%. All right? That's the long way to do it. Shorter way to do it is just to remember you can swoop to the right twice, and that's your percents. And then that would be 38%. Okay, it's always twice. All right, now For this next one, we have write 101.45 as a percent. If we use our short way, we can just go whoop, whoop, and we will get 145%. All right. Okay, so what I'd like you to do real quick is just in your whisk tonight, just write these three as percents, these three decimals. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay. All right. Now we're going to go from percents to decimals. Percents to decimals. So in this case, we just swoop it the opposite way. Instead of going to the right like we did in the last decimal, we can actually go to the left. Okay, so we take 56 and we go whoop, whoop, and we get 0.56. All right, makes it a little easier, but just for understanding purposes, you can go 56% to the fraction and then the fraction to the decimal. All right, now this one, whenever we have, in this case, we always start after the number and we go whoop, whoop. Uh-oh, I need to add something. I add a 0 in front and my decimal is 0.08. All right. You can continue to go down here. This is pretty easy. If we write 120 as a decimal, it's then going to be 1.20 or 1.2. These are the same idea. Okay. All right. If you could just please write, please do at least the 2% and 104%. You should be able to figure out, for instance, 17% is 0.17. If you could do these two in your whisk tonight, that would be great. All right, and the last thing we're going to be doing tonight to conclude our lesson, renaming percents as fractions. So if we want to take 50% and we want it to turn it into a fraction, remember you always have to put every fraction in simplest form, so you can't just leave it as 50 over 100. You have to simplify it to 1/2. All right, same sort of idea here. We can always set it over 100 and then simplify from there. Okay, so we have 125 over 100. Reduce it to 5 over 4. Rename as a mixed number. You do not, in this class and at this name in the game, you do not have to do this last section. Okay, you can keep it as a mixed, or as an improper fraction, excuse me. Okay, the reason being is it's easier when you put things into an equation to keep it as an improper fraction rather than turning it into a mixed number and then having to go back to a into a improper fraction. All right, so the last things we have today is rename these percents as fractions in simplest form. So for example, we could say that 25%, 1/4 simplified. 60% we could say as being 60 over 100. Simplify, we have 6 over 10. We could even go further and we can get 3 over 5. All right, so if you could please, this is the last assignment for you this evening, is to do 170% as a fraction and 120% as a fraction. All right, thank you guys. Please come to class with any questions. This should all be reviewed of you, but if anything seems out of the ordinary or completely new or you're totally confused on anything, please bring in any questions. Otherwise, have a good evening.